It's just about 11 a.m. on the East Coast of the United States, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Tamer Çavuşgil, coming to you from Georgia State University Cyber here in Atlanta. And I should remind our regular participants that this is almost 100, maybe more than 100 webinars that we've ran since April 2020. And thank you for being so loyal. And if you are a first-time participant, and we welcome you as well, thank you for joining us today for a very special conversation I'm going to have with Professor Anil Harzing. So just a few business matters here. We are offering this webinar as part of the MSI Consortium, Schools, Cyber Centers for International Business, Education and Research in the United States. And I mentioned that there are 9 other cybers in this collaboration, and you've seen some of their names already on the early slides. So this cyber webinar series we started early on focused on teaching, mostly online teaching, sharing best practice with each other as to how we overcome this new challenge. And then later on, we moved to conversations about research, and most recently, conversations about with business executives as well. We have now done more than 100 of these webinars. These are available. This and other webinars are recorded and made available on our website, GSU-CIBER website, as well as on our YouTube channel as well. So please feel free to share them with your colleagues so they can benefit from the insights that we offer through these webinars as well. Right after we can finish our conversation in just about an hour, you will get, as a participant, you will get a brief survey, just 5 questions. We'd appreciate it if you would respond to that and provide some suggestions for future webinars, topics, and speakers and all that. So everyone except the panelists, my guest and myself, is muted in this webinar. So we do encourage you to use the Q&A icon, Q&A function. Please post your questions and comments, and we'll try to respond to those as well. And if you have any questions for our staff, use the chat function. And I see a lot of people joining us from around the world, and we really appreciate, especially awkward times, those who've joined us in very awkward times of the evening, perhaps. So let me then just welcome my very, very special guest, Professor Anil Harzing, who is joining us from the United Kingdom, from Middlesex University. I think she doesn't need a lengthy introduction, but I will have to say a few things because she is really somebody. I think if you have not heard about her services, guidance, and commitment to providing professional development assistance to early career researchers, you should become aware of her vast resources and a beautiful website as well. Just a few things about Anil. Anil, you started in Netherlands. That's your home country. You got part of your education there. And then you taught at several universities before Middlesex University. You taught, I think, at Bradford and Maastricht and Tilburg, I think, earlier. And just before Middlesex, you were in Australia at the University of Melbourne, and you were teaching and also providing administrative leadership there. And Will's research interests have been primarily, I think, in the international HRM field, human resource management field, but you touched upon many topics along the way on such issues as expatriate conversations, cross-cultural issues, language in international business, and headquarters subsidiary relationships, all very important topics, and you certainly made great contributions in that area. But I think you are also very well known, how should I say, as the guru in journal quality and research performance metrics, because you developed these metrics and journal quality assessments early on. And Harzing.com is now well known, I think, and I hope some people will use it even more advantageously as a result of our conversation today, and we'll learn more about it. But it's a beautiful website, Harzing.com, some 750 distinct pages on it. And I guess, characterize it as a knowledge portal, a resource portal, not necessarily a website, but a knowledge portal, a resource portal, which is constantly growing and adding new features too over time. But I think the community, academic community, Anil, recognizes you and appreciates you for being such a dedicated, unselfish supporter of especially young academics. And the resources, I should say, you offer are not just limited to young academics. It's helpful for any academic, whether they are more mature or seasoned in their fields. So thank you for doing all of these things, and especially also in recent years bringing together women academics as well. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about that, about your Cigna network. Of course, Anil is also a fellow of the Academy of International Business. These fellows are thought leaders in international business, and Anil again shows her dedication to the field in another way. She is the official bibliometrician of the AIB fellows. If you like to look at the AIB website or Anvil's knowledge portal, you'll see that she's prepared several bibliographic analysis of several past deceased fellows, such as John Daniels, Jose de la Torre, and Stephen Cobran. And these are really great resources for young scholars to learn about the evolution of IB field from the perspective of these major contributors, seminal contributors to the field. I mean, I could say a lot more, but Anil, you're a great resource, great friend of the Academy, and a tireless worker. I'm going to say, how do you all do all this? But let's start with a little bit of history. I mean, how did you get started? And you've been at it for more than 2 decades now, being a resource to all of us, especially in the IB world.
Yeah, Well, first of all, thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Tamara. It's really, really wonderful to be here today. And thanks for all the participants for joining at sometimes really inconvenient times. I'm really pleased you asked me to talk about my website, or knowledge portal, as you call it, because that's the first time actually I've been asked to do this, and I love working on it. So I also love talking about it. So thanks for asking me. The reason I started with this, of course, when we start reflecting back 3-4 decades, it's always difficult to actually pinpoint when things started. But I think that from the very start of my professional career, and I started in academia in 1991, I've always been someone who's been quite pragmatic, but also proactive. So if I felt something was really not working for me, then I would try and fix it. But I'm not someone who goes on the barricades and fights all these political battles. That's not me. I'm actually quite a shy person, and I'm a very strong introvert as well. So that's really not my style. But I do like working behind the scenes and trying to orchestrate things behind the scenes and providing tools and resources to other people to also change their own circumstances. And then if we can all do that, then maybe gradually we can change the academic system. But I also realized, and that's the fun thing from reflecting back if you're later in your career, that I've always had a very strong drive to try to connect people. So when I was doing my PhD, and I'm aware that many of you in the audience will currently be doing your PhD or be early career academics, it was actually before the internet existed, and even email was still quite a novelty. So connecting with other people was not as easy as it is right now. So I set up what I called a young academics network during my PhD with PhD students and other early career academics. And we exchanged our bios, our research interests, our professional goals, and we kept each other in touch with each other by email. And that kind of bond really helped me in my academic career. So when I started in my first permanent academic job, I'd worked in the Netherlands in 3 universities before, but these were part-time or temporary positions. My permanent job was in Bradford in the UK. And I set up with 3 other women, LAWN, which was a local academic women's network. So we organized yearly workshops for undergraduate students who were interested in getting into research, and we did research seminars, but also skills development, networking sessions. So that really was the first time I set up kind of a network where we regularly met face to face. And then I think it was the early 2000s when I got talking to Srilata Zahir at the Academy of Management, and was talking about how, as an international member, an international participant, I did feel a bit out of place and I didn't know how everything worked. So she said, why don't you set up a membership involvement committee to help international members integrate better? So I did that, and I recruited about 50 country representatives and regional representatives. We had a whole structure, and we organized all sorts of activities. So I really enjoyed doing all of that and connecting people towards common goals. And looking back, that's really something that I've been doing from the start of my academic career. So I really want to say to PhD students, you can do that too. It's not just waiting until you're tenured, waiting until you're a professor. You can do that too.
That's wonderful. I mean, when you think about, Anil, about the reach, the number of people you're able to influence, help, provide guidance, way out there. I mean, not just in Europe, UK, or in the United States, but all over the world. Through your resources is just amazing. So it just shows, I think, your quality, your motivation, and a good heart, I should say, a warm heart to be able to influence people and who are struggling. And early on, especially in the PhD program, we all remember our PhD days. For a variety of reasons, it's a big task,
Yeah.
and sometimes you need this a little bit of help in hand. But thank you so much for everything you did. So, returning to your knowledge portal, harzing.com, how did you get started with that, and when was it? Was it around 1999?
Yeah, last century. It sounds ancient, but yeah, it was just in the last century. And It's actually my husband who pushed me to do this. My husband is a software engineer, and he knows a bit about academia because he did a PhD in operations research, but he decided not to start working in academia. But he keeps touch with all the developments. So he said this is really something you should do because this will become important in the future. And it was quite novel at the time to have your personal website, because remember, the internet really only started in the middle of the 1990s. So he first developed it and maintained it, but after a few years I learned how to do that myself. And I really am a bit of a technophobe. I'm not someone who adopts all the new technologies, but once I gain a bit of confidence, I actually enjoy doing it. So I've been doing that for the last 23 years. And at first, I simply used it to put my teaching materials online because we didn't have these extensive learning management systems at those times. So I wanted to get the slides to my students, and that was the easiest way. But I also started adding academic resources quite early. So the journal quality list that you referred to earlier, Tamer, was posted in 2000. And the publish or perish software then was added in 2006. So that was quite early in the history of my website. And both were really created for very pragmatic reasons. Like I talked about before, I wasn't happy with how things were working. So I tried to change them by creating resources.
Coming regarding the journal quality list, I remember the times every school used to prepare their own, and sometimes they didn't make sense. And it was very much influenced by the type of people you have in the, let's say, promotion tenure committee, and which discipline they came from in a business school, whether it's, finance or management, marketing, whatever. So in a sense, with your journal quality list, you brought some standardization, some rationale, some logic to these ratings. And I think it contributed to developing a more universal, let's say, generally agreed upon rankings. And that's very important because that helps people all over the world in different schools. Now, you also developed soon after that the publish or perish software. If you can describe that as well. And at this time, I'll encourage everybody who's with us today to post their comments, questions in the Q&A. And it's harzing.com, www.harzing.com. Somebody asked, but that is the website or the knowledge portal. So publish or perish, how did that come about, Anil?
Yeah, it's like the journal quality list. It was very pragmatic. Really, the reason was that I was unsuccessful in my promotion application for full professor at the University of Melbourne, where I worked at the time. And I was struggling to show that my work had significant impact, citation impact. And part of the reason was that at that time, many international business journals were not yet ranked in the Web of Science, or had only been ranked very recently. So if you were working in international business, your citations would be much lower than in other disciplines, more mainstream disciplines like organization behavior or economics. But I had noticed that Google Scholar, which had then been recently introduced, that was introduced in 2004 or 5, that did include a lot more publications and citations by international management academics. But Google Scholar wasn't very easy to manipulate. It wasn't easy to get data from. So again, my husband said, I can create you a tool for that. So he created a little software program that collated all the citations from Google Scholar and then calculated various citation metrics, including something called the H-index, which had been introduced just a year before. And the H-index is simply the number of papers with a certain number of citations. So if you have a H-index of 10, that means you have 10 papers with at least 10 citations each. If you have a H-index of 50, you have 50 papers with at least 50 citations each. So with that little program, I was able to show that actually my impact was higher than all the current professors who were already being promoted. I was promoted a year after, and I thought, well, if it helps me, then maybe it might be able to help other people as well. So I thought I'd put it on my website, and it did in the first couple of years help a lot of people calculating their H-index, and it was used like that for the first couple of years. But now it's used for literature reviews, people who want to look at which journals to submit their papers to, do bibliometric analysis, prepare themselves for job interviews, finding out about the people who work in an institution, or to write, as Tamer said earlier, laudations or obituaries, where you want to have a complete overview of someone's work. And I never, ever expected that to happen. So I think that's one other thing that I want to emphasize, is that sometimes we do things, we start things, we embark on things, but we have no idea where they're going to end. We can't predict whether things will be successful or not. So the key thing, I think, is to just be proactive and do things, and not sit there and wait until someone else does something about it.
And, you know, it's such a meritorious initiative, the publish or perish and, you know, various measures that you develop, which are, you know, objective, rational, systematic, however we want to call them, because up until then, it was really subjective decisions. And many people were subjected to subjective decisions, and so they were slighted. So they were disadvantaged. So, and then these measures have made their impact not just in IB world, but in the entire academy, because now it's so standard to see people referring to their H-index, not just Google Scholar citations, but H-index. It's become a standard and universally recognized, and it does emphasize, accentuate the impact, right? I mean, to what extent people have used your work and have referred to it, have benefited from it. So it was such a timely contribution. And well, I mean, another dimension of your work has been in terms of networking, bringing people together. And in particular, female academics. I mean, you started the SIGNA, if I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. SIGNA network is a sporting academics, female academics in their adventures. So if you can talk a little bit about that initiative as well.
I mentioned a bit earlier at the start that I'd created a women's network before with a few others, LAWN, which was a nice abbreviation, I thought. But then, of course, I moved to Melbourne, where, as Tamer already alluded to, I had fairly heavy administrative roles. So my external networking engagement took a bit of a hit there. But then I came back to the UK in 2014. And that was after having completed a number of research projects on female academics, and in particular looking at their position in editorial boards in journals. And I did that with a colleague in Melbourne, Isabel Metz, and we shown that in many journals, female academics were really underrepresented in comparison to female authors, especially, I must say, in international business, where we had a number of journals that had an almost fully male editorial board. So I became very much aware of the barriers that female academics might face in progressing up the career ladder. So after I moved to the UK, I decided we really needed to do something to systematically support women in academia. And because I'm located in the London area, we have so many universities in close proximity. We have about 40 universities in London. So with 3 junior colleagues, I decided to set up a network where we would meet regularly. And indeed, that network is called SIGNA. And it actually comes from the female version of the Greek word for swan. The SWAN abbreviation is Supporting Women in Academia Network. But we couldn't use SWAN because there was already another network called SWAN. So we decided to use SIGNA. And I kind of like that name because it sounds slightly mysterious. So yeah, we started small with meetings with maybe 6 to 10 participants at a different campus every time. So we got to know lots of different universities in the London area as well. But by now we've grown to more than 350 members. We have members in more than 30 countries. There's more than 100 different universities represented. So some universities might have 10, 20 members. Middlesex has 30, but some universities only have 2 or 3. And we have a mailing list where we share all sorts of resources that might be useful. We keep a membership spreadsheet where we provide information about our research interests, the things we want to do in our academic careers, the journals we would like to publish in, but also the advice we would like to have from others and the advice that we can give to other academics. So that's been very helpful to create connections within the network. And we also still meet up 5 to 6 times a year. And that's not for just an hour listening to a paper. No, it's 2 to 3 hours, sometimes half a day or a full day. And we talk about all sorts of career development issues. So we'll be celebrating our 10-year anniversary in June next year. And we'll have a 3-day event, which we're really looking forward to. We've also expanded the organizing team. First, we were doing this with just 4 of us. Now we have 17. So we have a lot more women power to organize our events. So this network is only open to female academics, but I do write up a blog post on every meeting, and that usually includes the slides to any presentations, but also lots of other resources. So if you're in the audience and you're a male and you feel left out, you can still benefit from all of the resources that we share during those meetings.
And congratulations on the 10-year anniversary. It's such a meritorious initiative. I mean, when you think about how, imbalanced we were way back in terms of the diversity of people, gender and in other ways, represented in conferences. I mean, I remember a time when it was just male conference. Of course, I've been around for a long time, but I mean, you mentioned the editorial boards. That was the case. And a lot of males and not enough females. So we've come a long way. And it's so good to see in the academy when you attend a conference or when you see publications, a better diversity. And it comes as a result of purposeful efforts. It doesn't happen on its own. So somebody needs to get it going. Somebody needs to take the initiative and be the mover and shaker. And you have been and will in that sense. And especially for young scholars starting their academic career, without necessarily help, maybe when they got their PhD, maybe they were not surrounded by mentors who could help them, who had the good heart. So it's such a great initiative. And Will, I also see on your knowledge portal, you have a blog section How did that start, and how does it fit in with your efforts to support young academics?
Yeah. It's the blog section is actually now one of the most active sections of my website. I started it in March 2016. And I was quite late to blogging. I mean, some people have been blogging since the start of the internet, but I was quite hesitant to start, because if you start a blog and then do one and then nothing for a couple of months and then another one, and then you don't get an audience. So I felt I wanted to wait until I really had time and something to say. So yeah, I started March 2016, and I post about all things academia. So I post about publishing, having academic impact, but also what I call academic etiquette. How do you behave in different circumstances? I post about conferences. If I've been to a conference, I post about the most interesting things that happened at a conference. I also sometimes discuss classic papers or books. I post about my own research. And of course, with the Publish or Perish software, I post a lot about tips on how to use that. So there's a lot of material in there. And the blog now has more than 400 posts. I never imagined that when I started. But I actually had a couple of really varied reasons for starting that blog that I would like to share, because I think people don't often realize the benefits of blogging. First of all, I thought it would be a really good way to share the experience I have in academia with a wider audience. Tomo, you mentioned earlier, with a website you can share with the whole world, much more so than when you only talk to your mentees. But also, I noticed that I really enjoy blogging. All of you in the audience, you will have had the experience of writing academic papers. Even after you've done the whole research, a long time writing up the papers, refining, submitting to a journal, getting it back, desk rejected, or getting it back rejected after review, rewriting. Sometimes it can take 5-7 years, in some cases even 10 years before you've published that paper. So writing up a blog post that you can write up in a few hours, post, then distribute all over the world and have impact, that's something really enjoyable to do as an alternative for writing academic papers, because you have an impact quickly. And then also, I think it really helps if you're a senior academic doing a lot of mentoring, because you'll get a lot of academics contacting you, asking you questions. And then if you need to give the same answer again and again, whether that's by email or face-to-face, it becomes a bit tedious. So I can now refer people to a blog post or a section of my website and say, well, maybe you read that first and then come back to me if you have any additional questions. So that really helped me as well. So for all of you who are listening and thinking, maybe this is something I would like to do, but I have no idea how to start, you don't need to start your own blog. There's lots of blogs that accept guest posts. So approach one of these blogs and pitch your idea of what you would like to write about. See whether you like it, and then maybe you can do it regularly. If you really start enjoying it, you can start your own blog. And remember, you can blog about your own research. It's a great way to reach a wider audience, because, of course, people outside academia don't read our journal articles, but they will read our blogs. I've had people contacting me about my research in consultancies, in businesses, who said, that's interesting. Can you tell me more about this? Mm-hmm. But even academics themselves, they might not tell you, but they actually quite like blogs, because they can read about research really quickly. They don't need to go through the whole journal article. And especially if you've published a couple of articles about a topic and you write that up as a blog post, like what have you learned about this topic? It's a really nice introduction to your research. And then people, if they want to know more, they can get to your articles. But it's an easy way in. So I can really recommend you to try it out if you think it's something you might enjoy.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's really sage advice. I mean, about the impact again and getting out your insights, whatever jewels of your research you have produced, sharing that quickly and impact in business too. I think you are very right. I mean, I don't think very many business people out there, they're just too busy to read
Yeah.
academic articles. So if you have a concise message about some research that you've done, I think that will be consumed fairly rapidly, and you'll get good appreciation from that as well. So that's wonderful. I know you also published books about some of these topics, Anvil, haven't you?
Yeah. And again, that's something, and that's why I wanted to mention this as well, because publishing books is something you can do with publishers, with commercial publishers, but you can also self-publish books. And this is what I've done with the Publish or Perish software, because I wanted to write a guide for it. But of course, no publisher is going to publish a guide to a software program. So what I did is I self-published a guide with CreateSpace, and that's now called Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing. You can just submit a PDF Word version of a manuscript. You can design your own covers. That means you can publish the books. You can set your own price. You can make them as cheaply as possible so it's accessible to a large audience. And you can always update the book, which is great if you have a software manual or if you may be doing a book for your students. You might be wanting to do a book of your teaching materials. So I did publish 2 Publish or Perish guides, but I also published a couple of career guides that were based on my blog. So I have done a couple of kind of multi-part blog posts on promotion, on publishing, on creating impact, but also on creating social media profiles. So I created books out of those, combining the blog posts and writing introductions around them, connecting them. And I'd like to show you this one, which is the publishing book. There's also a book on impact. There's a book on creating social media profiles. And there's one on writing effective promotion applications, which I did because I got a lot of questions from my colleagues. So I just designed the covers myself. I'm not creative. My father is an artist. Tamer mentioned the sculpture behind me that was made by my father. I'm not, but anyone can do creative stuff with PowerPoint and all sorts of tools these days. So again, it is something that I can really recommend you to start doing, even if it's maybe doing a book for your family. I did a book for my father's 80th birthday and again for his 90th birthday. It's a really nice thing to do. And it allows you to kind of channel your creativity as an academic into other work than just our academic journal articles.
And Will, I think I have to say you are very creative. You are very good with those covers. I love those covers. Your comment about Amazon Direct Publishing is very timely because we may soon take that route as well with the manuscript. I finished with a couple of my colleagues, one from industry, one from academia.
Mm-hmm.
I've had very painful experiences with traditional publishers. 20 years ago, we started a textbook, and we're still doing several editions of that, but it's very painful. And when you see these traditional publishers getting outdated, staying behind times technologically and otherwise. It just has been very frustrating. So we may actually do that. I did take a look at the Amazon books that you have. I mean, it's a wonderful number of resources there. And I know that they are offered at a very, very, very reasonable price. So it's in the reach of anybody. And I think it's just another way of multiplying your impact, and will that's a wonderful way. One of our participants asked, how does one join Cigna? I think they just contact you or somebody,
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
can.
Just send me an email. Just send me an email, and I'll let you know.
Okay. And another participant is asking the names of the textbooks. Those are all on Amazon. I mean, most of them, right?
Yeah,
Amazon.com, right? So
yeah.
just key in Harzing, Anvil Harzing, something like that, and you'll get a host of publications there. So that's very
I
easy.
can.
You don't. They're also on
I've
your
just
website. Yeah. Also, yeah. So
I've
that's
just put a
wonderful.
link in the chat. So
Great. Thank you. Thank you. So uh, now we talked a little bit earlier about the pandemic and the impact of that on our lives. Certainly,
yeah,
it changed us in so many different ways. Our students as well, who have struggled, and they're still struggling. So mental health is a big issue these
yeah,
days. But
yeah.
you didn't sit still. I noticed during during soon after the pandemic, you started several new initiatives. I remember your YouTube channel, housing academic resources, positive academia initiative. I mean, these are very important. I thought if we can just talk a little bit about those, that would be very good too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's funny, isn't it? Because of course, in the first couple of months, after the pandemic started, we were all looking for things to connect with other people. Because obviously we were all in our own homes, and yeah, we missed that connection. And and his team started a webinar series. And I discovered that I actually loved kind of video recording. So I recorded videos for my colleagues, telling them about the resources we provided within the institution, just trying to create those connections. And I started creating more and more videos, and I realized I really enjoy video editing. That might sound a bit nerdy, but I really enjoy doing that. And I decided, well, the best way to share videos is through YouTube, which I'd never used before. I'm not someone who uses YouTube regularly, but it's a really easy thing to do. If you have a couple of videos that you've done, you can easily create your own YouTube channel. There's nothing to it. It's made so that everyone can easily start in this. I've now created, I think, more than 200 videos, and again, they're on the same type of topics: publishing, how to know which journal to submit to, how to get cited, engaging with social media. I've also done videos of my sessions in the doctoral program on doing literature reviews, deciding on your research strategy. I've also talked about navigating academia as a PhD student, building sustainable careers, so all sorts of academic topics. And again, if you're still hesitating, just give it a try. I mean, you can't really fail. If you decide you don't like it, you stop. If you decide you really don't like what you've put online, you can close down your account. So don't let this hesitation stop you. But yeah, I really enjoy that. And yeah, the positive academia initiative, that's also something that really came from the pandemic. Tamo, you mentioned mental health issues. We experienced that a lot in the UK as well with our students, but also our colleagues. And the first year of the pandemic, we were all kind of running so hard and we were trying to convert everything. We were so busy, so I kept ourselves busy. But then when we had another lockdown in the UK towards the end of 2021, and we had the dark winter, people were getting really a little bit depressed and fed up
Yes.
with it all. So I was really thinking about, is there anything that I can do to bring a bit of joy? And all of a sudden, I thought, well, there's so many things that I like about my colleagues. Why don't I just start writing up recommendations for them? So that's what I did in the Christmas holidays. I started writing up recommendations for my close colleagues, for academics I'm mentoring. And if you haven't seen this yet, I think many of you will have a LinkedIn account, but you might not know the recommendations feature. You can write up a recommendation for anyone in your network. So if there's anyone you've worked with and you've really appreciated working with, you can write up a recommendation for them. And I've been surprised at how easy it is to do this, because if you've really enjoyed working with someone, if you really admire someone, the words flow easily. So I've done about 70 of those to date, and I keep writing. And it really brings kind of a little spark of joy to people because it's so unexpected. And everyone has been really thrilled. But more important to that, I think, is that it inspires others to then do that as well. So that's the whole idea about the Positive Academia Network, is that if we start doing positive things, it inspires others to do positive things as well. Because in the world today, we are confronted with so much negativity that it's easy to start focusing only on the negative, rather than realize what is still positive in our lives. So again, it's something that every individual can do. You don't need to be a senior academic. You don't need to have particular level of experience. All of us can write a little recommendation or a nice email to someone saying, I read your article. I really enjoyed it. It really gave me ideas about how to approach my own work. Or if you're a PhD student and you're working with another student, you've enjoyed that experience, just write them a quick email. I'm sure that people will be thrilled. And many people have told me, this really made my day. This made my week. And it's such a little thing to do.
It's amazing. It's amazing, Anvil, what you're doing. And there's a lot of discussion these days after the pandemic, about happiness. How do you reach happiness? How do you become more happy? And I would say, I think a lot of people would agree with me. If one is seeking happiness, start by making others happy.
Yeah.
Because in the process, you will gain a lot of satisfaction. So reaching out and helping, I mean, your little advice there, you have people in your network. Go there, spend a few minutes and write a recommendation. Say something about nice that will influence them as well as people around them. So that's so good advice. And I've got you here. I've got to ask, I mean, before our time runs out here, you're a seasoned, thoughtful, and unselfish academic. I'm sure you have a lot of advice for people who are in our conversation today and those who will perhaps view this video later on. Your advice for young scholars about developing their careers, perhaps best practices. If you can offer some words of wisdom on that as well, that'll be great.
Yeah, and you can approach that in a number of ways. I mean, I could give very practical advice, but that's advice you can often find on fora or in career guides. But I would like it to take it a little broader in a sense. And for me, what is most important is in academia to do this job because you have a passion for it. Do this job because you want to realize your own ideas, your passion, whether that's in the teaching area or the research area or the leadership area. I encounter a lot of academics, especially in business schools, obviously, who like to compare themselves with CEOs or consultants and start to complain that, well, I don't earn nearly as enough as in academia because these people earn much more. I think that's not a very productive way of having an academic job. I think it's really more productive to see yourself as an artist, a creative, creating things. And I think we have a wonderful job because despite all of the constraints and despite all of the things that might be happening in academia that we're not so happy with, we still have a lot more freedom than most other careers. So try and use that freedom to really make a difference. And that will make your daily life so much easier because if you know why you are doing things, if you know you're doing it because you have a passion to make a difference, then your job becomes a lot easier. I must also say, though, that you talked about happiness. I think it's also about fit, the fit between you and your institution, and the fit between you and your supervisors and mentors. So I would say find your happy place. Don't go for a supervisor because they're necessarily the top academic in the field, because they're famous. Go for someone who fits with your personal values and sees the benefit of working with you. Don't necessarily always aim to work at the most prestigious institution that you can aim for if that doesn't fit with your own personal values, because you can be very unhappy in an institution if there is no fit. So kind of have a passion, find your happy place, but also don't compare yourself with others all the time. We tend to do that a lot as academics. It's like, they're at this stage of their career. I'm too, they've done this, I've done that. Am I good enough? I don't think that's very productive because every career is different. Everyone's life circumstances are different. So you shouldn't measure your success by comparing yourself to others because you don't know how they achieved that success. It might have been pure brilliance or hard work, but it might have been pure luck. Or they might have had a privileged background, growing up in a country where they had access to excellent education. Or maybe they had to sacrifice a lot in their personal life to achieve what they did. So don't model yourself on others. As long as at the end of every year, you've become better than you were at the start of the year. At the end of your career, you've achieved your goals. You've done well. So I think that's probably my 3 tips. Have a passion, find your happy place, and don't model yourself on others.
That's wonderful. Wonderful advice. Again, very thoughtful, sage advice. And Will, I heard you also use the acronym AIB in a creative way in terms of advice. If you can mention that too.
Yeah,
in your
that's
AIB, what does the AIMB stand for?
yeah. Ask for advice. That's the A. There's lots of advice around. There's my website, but there's lots of fora as well. There's lots of books. You can talk to senior colleagues. Invest in your own career. Make sure that you keep learn the new skills. Make sure that you invest time in your own professional development. And then the B is really what I've been looking for, what I've been mentioning earlier, believe in yourself. Don't model yourself in others, and believe in your own values and what you want to achieve. So yes, ask, invest, believe.
Ask, wonderful. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I'm sure in your experience you've seen, so you talked about, sort of advice for colleagues, and very, very good advice. But also you've seen, and I've seen mistakes people make as well. So in your experience, what are some common mistakes that we should try to avoid?
Yeah, yeah. I guess maybe, and maybe I'm going on a bit about this as well, but um, going back to the advice, the mistake I see is again seeing academia purely in terms of competition, seeing everything as I need to make sure I'm better than the other person. Yes, I do realize the job market is very competitive these days, but it doesn't mean that your whole emphasis needs to be about beating others. That's not a healthy way to engage with others. And remember that academia is all about collaboration. You're not going to, a PhD might be a fairly lonely business, interacting only with your advisors. But if you continue in an academic career, you're going to have to collaborate with others. You're not going to get anywhere if you do everything in your own. So focus on collaboration, not competition. Another tip, and that's something that really I struggled with at the start of my academic career, is not understanding that journals are communities. They're communities of scholars having a conversation together. So if you're submitting to a journal, you're joining that conversation. So if you're joining a conversation, that means you need to properly acknowledge what conversation is going on in that community. So don't barge into a journal saying, I'm the first who has ever done this, so you need to publish this. That's not going to be successful. First of all, because you're most likely you aren't the first. It just means you haven't done your literature review properly, or your topic is so narrow that it's not of interest to others. But even if you are the first, you really need to frame it so that others are understanding how it contributes to the conversation. So I've called that the cement between the bricks of knowledge. So we all add a brick of knowledge to the house of scientific knowledge, but we need to explain what the cement is, how your brick kind of connects with the other brick. So see that journal as a community that you want to join. And I think if you realize that, things will become a lot easier.
Wonderful advice again. Thank you so much, Anvil. Great advice. I have to agree wholeheartedly with everything you said, and you said it much better than me or many other people. There's a very specific question from one of our participants about the use of AI these days in teaching. So this colleague is asking, she is joining a new school, and she's been posed the question, how will you handle ChatGPT among your students? I mean, it's a very specific question. There's a lot of advice going on the use of AI these days in our teaching. That's something we all have to embrace as well. But in your own experience, how do you do that?
It's an excellent question, and I can really understand you are struggling with this. But I have to say that I don't have any golden pearls of knowledge on this. We are still struggling with this in my own institution. But Tamer, I think it would be, if you haven't already done this in the webinar series, it would be an excellent topic for a webinar, and I'm sure it would be very well attended, because it
Right.
is a field where we're all trying to stumble our way across, and I don't think anyone has really found the best way yet. So maybe put it on the list of topics to
Right.
explore
Right.
in future seminars.
Definitely we will. And there's been a number of seminars, webinars down here and there, but we will share with you, Barbara, what we're getting from our university at Georgia State in terms of some people who are dealing with this issue. we're kind of we're running out of time. I'm so glad we had this conversation. It's been so interesting, so beneficial. So many more people will benefit from this. And we're getting a lot of praises from the people who joined us. I think you probably see in some of that. And we'll a lot of thanks, a lot of appreciation. Perhaps just some last words of wisdom. Anything else you wish to communicate? I have many more questions I ask. I asked one at the beginning, how do you find time to do all this? Because you are so unselfish with your dedication to these. But maybe you can offer some closing
Yeah.
comments, and
I think really in the question of how to find time is, again, don't try and compare yourself with others. I've started my website 25 years ago. Yes, obviously there's more on there than someone who started last year. So anything worthwhile in our professions is the product of sustained cumulative actions. It's not starting something today and then giving up tomorrow. So really it's about persistence. But also realize that in some roles you might have more time to do this than others. I currently have a role as staff development lead. So my role really at Middlesex University is helping academics in their development. So a lot of the work I'm doing, I'm putting on my website, and I'm using a lot of the work on my website in my role. So don't think you need to be able to do this on top of a busy academic job. And then finally, and that draws back to something I've said earlier, it's much easier to do something if you enjoy doing it. I really enjoy writing blog posts. I really enjoy video editing. So if you do something you enjoy, then it becomes easy to find time for it, because the division between hobby and work starts to blur. And then finally, coming back to my website, I think again it is something that all of you can do. During your PhD, you often build up very specialized knowledge in a particular area that might be useful to other academics as well. So why not write that up and make that available online? It could even be a set of teaching resources that are particularly helpful. But the key is really to share it with others rather than just keep it to yourself. And it really helps you as well. It doesn't just help others, because it's a bit of a manifesto to the world. This is what I'm interested in. This is what I have knowledge about. So it will draw others to you, and it will lead to collaborations in that field as well. But you really need to give to others to receive. And if we all do that, then it's easy to make academia a more collaborative place. So I think that's probably a fitting end to this webinar.
thank you so much, Anil. I must say you are one of the best examples of positive academia, and we're so glad to have you as a colleague. And so happy that we did this conversation today. Unfortunately, we've come to a time limitation here. I thank, first of all, everybody who joined us today, and everybody who's sharing their thanks, appreciation for Anvil. And we'll thank you so much. We'd love to have you come back another time for another conversation,
Sure.
and look forward to future interactions as well. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. As I said at the beginning, when you log off, you will receive an email with a brief questionnaire. Please respond to that, and have a great rest of your day.